Welcome to the Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of women in Canada the new norm. This is episode 40, entitled Of Sound Body. My name is Leanne Castellino, and I'm your host, inspiring, uniting, and leading the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. Please welcome our guest this week, Samantha Montpetit-Huynh. Samantha is the founder of samcoretrainer.com, a company that specializes in providing specific training for women and in particular mothers who experience incontinence, pelvic pain, hip pain, and prolapse. Samantha is a personal trainer, a seasoned entrepreneur. She's also married and has 2 children. Thanks so much for joining us, Samantha.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
We're excited to have you. Now, let's start for the benefit of perhaps people who might not be clear. What is incontinence specifically, and how does it affect women and specifically mothers?
Okay, so incontinence, the actual clinical term, is any drop of urine that comes out of your body when you're not sitting on the toilet, or when you don't want it to. And, I often joke and say, well, and I would hope you wouldn't want it to unless you're sitting on the toilet. But because there has been, I would say, a lot more information on incontinence, or what other companies are calling light bladder leakage or different things, there is a lot more knowledge about it. But I think what the media has done as a result of it is they've actually normalized it. And the way it affects women is, even though people are talking a lot about it, it definitely is life altering. It is not, it's not, I think the word I'm looking for, but it could certainly, it's usually the first sign of some other bigger issue that could potentially happen down the road. But what we're doing is, I really believe deep down inside is that they are suffering somewhat. It could certainly limit their ability for certain exercises. When they cough and sneeze, they might leak a little bit and they feel embarrassed. They're always wearing a panty liner. And in some cases, some people have such bad incontinence that they actually have to plan their routes when they go outside, for example, and know where every bathroom is. And for mothers, this can really be life altering and very stressful for them, because when they're trying to just deal with their lives being a mother and take care of their children, they're also having to worry about, where's the bathroom, and do I have everything for me, not just for my child. So it really can be life altering for a lot of women.
So let's break that down a little further and get into sort of, what are some of the myths around incontinence, or how women, in particular mothers, in their recovery, how they would experience this, how they would be treated for it? What are some of the myths around that?
Okay, so the number one myth is it is normal. It's a normal part of motherhood. I've had babies. This is what I hear all the time. I've had babies, so of course I'm going to leak a little bit, right? Oh, I can't no longer, run after my kids, or I would never jump on a trampoline, tee, and they giggle about it. And I really believe that deep down inside we giggle as a mask, because we don't want to admit that this is actually something that bothers us, because it's shocking, right? And after women have babies, this is something that is very, very rarely discussed or even addressed. Often, especially if you're working with an obstetrician and even a midwife, it's something like, oh, well, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Just do your Kegels, as we'll say. There's no instruction how to do a Kegel properly, because a lot of the research shows that more than 50% of women don't even know how to Kegel properly in the first place, because nobody has actually taught them. So they're kind of left feeling like, okay, well, you know what, I guess I'll just have to deal with this like everything else. And of course, that's one of the last things that they actually quote unquote deal with, because, they just had a baby, and they're thinking about other things, where this is such an important part and missed step in the postpartum recovery.
And I'm thinking as well that if it's not treated properly, it can lead to other issues that are not even physical. We're talking about mental, right?
Absolutely. So like I said in the beginning, it certainly isn't, that's what I meant to say. It's not life-threatening, but it certainly can be life-altering. Because it's so normalized, and especially in the media, there's commercials out there, like for example, Always, and there's people who are dancing and they're smiling and they've got their pads on, or you've got other celebrities telling you to pack their toys before they go to the gym. That makes me crazy, because you're saying that for women, just accept it. Everybody pees a little, no big deal. But nobody is told that if you leave that and then you have another child, or you decide to go running, or God forbid menopause hits, now you've got this big influence of hormonal changes. The current research is telling us that by the age you hit 50, approximately 50% of women are going to have some degree of pelvic organ prolapse. So what that is when the actual organs of the pelvis start to descend into the uterus, into the vagina. So when people ignore things like incontinence and pass it off as, oh, it's just a little bit of a thing, it's no big deal, or the doctors are telling to do Kegels, or in extreme cases, suggesting surgery, they're not telling them what these long-term effects can happen if these things are still ignored. Because as far as I'm concerned, and what I tell people is, incontinence is just the first sign of something is not working properly. There's something in your deep system, there's something going on with the muscles of the pelvis. We call them pelvic muscles. They're not responding properly, and so you're leaking. So if we don't address that first little sign, then over time, usually symptoms get worse. I went to visit my grandmother today. She's 96. She's in the hospital. God love her, but she's completely incontinent, right? And she's confided in me that, this is so embarrassing. I hate when people have to come and change my diaper. But she didn't just wake up one day like that. It happened. It happened at some point. I mean, she had 5 children, right? And then over time, we ignore. It gets a little bit worse, And now this poor woman is in the hospital, completely incontinent. And what people don't know is that incontinence is the second leading cause for why seniors get to be put in nursing homes.
Wow. So
yeah.
Let me ask you this: in what specific ways then do you and your company help women who experience this?
Okay. So my first thing is I educate them, right? So when I'm telling them, it's not normal to leak, they're saying why? Well, then I educate them about what the deep core system is. I often ask them, about their pelvic floor, and surprisingly not, there are a lot of women, even mothers, who don't even know what a pelvic floor is. So educate them first about that. Then start talking about the deep core. So you've got 4 parts to your core. You've got your diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle. You've got your transverse abdominis, which is your deepest abdominal muscles. Then you have your multifidus, which are your deep spinal muscles. And then you have your pelvic floor. And your pelvic floor is on the bottom. It's actually the foundation of your core. But for you to treat incontinence, or to help minimize it or avoid it in the first place, we have to work with the entire core. Just doing Kegels is in most cases not enough. It's not successful. And because the muscles of your pelvic floor, they actually start at the front of your pubic bone, and they go right under, and they insert in the bottom of your spine. These are muscles like every other muscle in your body. So, just like the rule of everything else, if you don't use it, you lose it. And you have to know if those muscles, how are they working? Are they working well, or are they too loose? Are they too tight? We want to be able to have that pelvic floor working full range of motion, just like a bicep curl, just like a chest press. We want those muscles to be able to work properly. So first part is a big part of is education. Then I teach them how to breathe properly, because remember, I told you that diaphragm is your breathing muscle. And believe it or not, if you know how to use your core properly, your breathing actually responds with your pelvic floor. Our core almost works like a sub pump. So when you inhale and your diaphragm expands and descends and comes down, it brings the pelvic floor expands as well. And when you exhale and your diaphragm comes back up, it brings the pelvic floor back up with it. So this is actually how our system works. So that would be just the beginning. Then what I start adding that into regular movement. There's actually quite, there's no cookie cutter approach, but a lot of it is the way people stand and sit. It's a lot of these deep muscles within the core and the pelvic floor that are just probably not responding, either not responding right. Sometimes it's a timing issue. There's all kinds of reasons why somebody would be incontinent. It's not just because we've had a child, because there's a lot of people who are incontinent who've never had children, right? So we have to look at a much bigger picture. But quite honestly, when we're talking about the pelvic floor and the core and the deep system, most often or not than not, less is more. People go way too hard, way too fast, especially new moms, especially when they're in the world now, 2018, and you've got Instagram and you've got all these women showing them their six packs 2 weeks after they had a baby, and their baby is lying on the floor and they're doing jump squats and stuff like that. Having this unrealistic expectation of what your body is supposed to do and what's supposed to look like is causing a lot of damage. And it's unfortunate because we're seeing this more and more in younger mothers, right? This is something, when you say incontinence to somebody, they think of their grandmothers. They think, oh yeah, my aunt, had her bladder lifted. This is happening to women who are 30 and 40, in their 30s and 40s, right? So a big part of what I do is I educate, and then I give them all the tools to help build that core, so when they do decide to eventually run or whatever it is that they do, they're not leaking. And I make sure that it's as easily accessible as possible, so I do it all online.
So let me ask you this: what has surprised you the most about the women that you've helped train who perhaps arrived with very little hope, or also about what surprised you about the information or the inaccuracy of that information that they were given about how to treat and help themselves before they came to see you?
So sorry, say that again.
What has surprised you most about the women that you've helped, perhaps, who have arrived to you having no hope?
Oh, well, I mean, I think in general, it's that go hard or go home mentality. I often talk about the fitness industry because I've been in the fitness industry now for close to 17 years. Working with moms, pregnant, postpartum, and even later, seasoned moms like myself, is that there's this, I feel like every year the fitness industry is going harder, and we're doing HIIT routine, classes, and we're doing CrossFit, and we're, lifting cars over our head. And it's all in this effort to stop looking like we've had a child. And as much as it doesn't really surprise me anymore, it's still surprising me the lack of information and education that they're getting from these personal trainers who are quote unquote specialized in pre and postnatal. And because a lot of the information out there is still very outdated. And I almost feel like the fitness industry preys on new moms. And I say this very openly. I say this online all the time. I say it in the courses that we teach, that they know that moms, especially a new mom, is so desperate to feel normal again. So they run these mom and baby boot camp classes, and women are going in the day after they get their green light from their doctor at 6 weeks. They're signed up, they're going full force, and they're pushing themselves because, they're seeing all these other women in the class doing it. So, if they're doing it, must be safe, right? So I guess they come to me when they finally have figured out that after months of doing burpees and jump squats and all this other stuff that they thought was okay, that I'm finally now pulling them way back, and I'm teaching them just to reconnect, or not even reconnect, to connect in the first place, because they've never even been told or educated in this information, right? And thankfully people are talking a lot more about it, but still I'm finding there's a huge gap what people are actually doing. So, my goal really is to just educate people and give them their confidence back. Because a lot of these women, I don't care if they're wearing pads every day and they're wearing panty liners, they're laughing. Nobody wants to pee. Nobody wants to smell like urine. It's not fun.
So with women's health being at the heart and the core of what you do, what would you say has motivated your entrepreneurial pursuits all these years? Why this area?
Yeah, I guess it's to take ownership and take back control of our health, right? Put it this way: if we lived in France, you would get 20 visits with a pelvic floor physiotherapist as part of your postpartum health care. Here, I feel it's becoming less and less. I very often speak with moms groups, and I ask them, like, who had an internal assessment for 6-week checkup, and maybe a quarter of the hands go up, right? I'm hearing more and more that women are saying, oh, he didn't even look at me. He just, asked me a couple questions to say you're fine. But then those are the same people who are telling them it's okay to go back to exercise, which I find is really irresponsible. So I guess in a way, because healthcare seems to be going the opposite direction, and we're getting less and less and less with all these cutbacks, but I feel more like my duty to educate women and for them to demand, that they get treatment and demand that they be assessed. I often tell people, like when I speak with pregnant women, I said, at your 6th week, there might be, your doctor might not do an internal assessment. You need to demand it. You want to know what's going on, whether you've had a cesarean delivery or a vaginal delivery. You want to make sure that everything is okay. But regardless of that, make sure you see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. That is by far, I say, if you forget everything that I've ever said, please make sure that you see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Because I know, here in Canada, I don't know where it's like in other parts of the world, but you go see a pelvic floor physio, they are regular physiotherapists. If you have extended health care, it is covered. It doesn't say vagina physio on the receipt. HR is not going to know when you hand in your form. But this is something that's really important, that women should really take control of their health and be empowered in their health, and especially their pelvic health. No, you don't want to be like my grandmother. It's not, some people would look at a 96-year-old and think, oh, she's probably given up. She hasn't. I talk to her all the time, and she says how embarrassing and how she never thought she would be like this.
What would you say that you have learned about your journey as an entrepreneur, and specifically as an entrepreneur who specialized in women's health?
That it's, well, for sure, being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. It is hard. It is a struggle every day. I mean, certainly there's some great days, but then there's some great lows. I mean, it's never consistent for me. It's always up and down. It's like a roller coaster. But I kind of feed off that. I worked in the regular corporate world for years and years and got a regular steady paycheck, but I did the same old. I like change. I like different things. I also like very much being in control. But because I work more, and the challenge is because I am in the fitness industry, people expect me, and I did this in the very beginning, is, weight loss, fat loss, and kicking their butt and making people, so they can't walk the next day. And sure, I could certainly still do that, but it's really changed in that I want to prevent a lot of things. And in so many cases, I guess now, because I'm going to be 48 in December, I'm taking my own experiences that less is certainly, more. And so being an entrepreneur in the fitness side, it's a little bit more difficult to get people to buy in, because they feel like, well, but you're fitness, so you should be doing this. And they don't understand. And for some people, they might feel intimidated by me, right? Because I used to lift very heavy. So I am quite muscular. So they look at me like, oh my God, you're beating me up. And I'm like, no, that used to be my game before, but that's not really where I'm coming from anymore. I'm all about health and wellness and prevention and injury prevention and, dysfunction prevention. So because of that, I found me changing my journey, not my journey, but my path has been a bit of a struggle for people to really understand. But I think I'm finally getting people kind of going, okay, I get it, right? I think that, but I was listening to a podcast today, was talking about the beauty about entrepreneurship is you might be doing something for 5 years and feel like, okay, this is it, this is what I'm going to do, but then things change. So if you're really into it for the long run, you will go with those changes. And who knows, I might be doing something else in 5 years, but I know I will never work for anybody else again, because there's nothing more satisfying and gratifying than changing someone's life. I love it.
Well, certainly the work that you do is impacting lots of people, and we hope that it will continue to with the information you've shared with us today. Thanks so much to our guest, Samantha Montpetit-Huynh, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great.
And thank you to everyone tuning in. Your comments are always welcome and encouraged. Please subscribe to our Women's March Canada channel and receive updates every time we upload a new podcast or video. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities is the strength of our country. This is the Women's March Canada podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Women's March CDA and our website, womensmarchcanada.com. My name is Leanne Castellino. Thanks so much for joining us and have a great day.